So this is our movie. Let's call it A Good Boy. It follows Rusty the dog on his adventures being a lifelong friend of his owner, from boyhood to manhood, from puppy to doggo. We've seen the trailer for this movie at least a dozen times in our lives, and we all know they're going to kill our good boy at the end. Let's try and evoke emotion in our writing and not this tear-jerking nonsense. You leave Rusty alone. I'm author DC Fergerson, and this is the Worldbuilding Dojo. Before we get started, let me talk to all you authors out there. Are you just getting started? Were you looking to build a newsletter subscription and grow your fan base? Well, Art of the Arcane is offering managed promotion services through BookFunnel. You get a BookFunnel membership and management of your newsletter to build out your subscribers, and all you need to do is stay in touch with them. I'm using it myself. I have a link in the description down below if you'd like to try it out. The first most important thing to understand in evoking emotion is to make me care. If I've spent a grand total of 6 pages with this side character throughout your novel, you can't expect it to mean much to me when you kill them off. I don't care how good your writing is. Take this beheading, for example. This scene isn't meant to make you care at all for the guy on the log. It's actually meant to build the character of the guy swinging the sword. Let's flash forward and go full circle to this beheading, and you can't tell me that you didn't care. The amount of emotion that you can evoke from a particular character in your writing is proportional to how much you invested the reader in that character. By midway through your story, I should be able to identify your protagonist by mannerisms and speech alone, at the very least. Better still if I can do that for multiple characters. These slight bits of attention to detail in your writing are paramount to creating a bond between your audience and your characters. For example, I have an ally character in the Dragon's Dream saga by the name of Giovanna. She's a fiery Italian shapeshifter, and her native form looks like a supermodel. If she's criticizing fashion or etiquette, walking seductively, quick to raise her voice, talking with her hands, or even you just hear the clicking of high heels coming down a hallway, my readers are going to be extremely familiar that that's her. They'll know it's her without me calling her out by name. That's a connection. Familiarity is only part of it, though. Stephen King is credited with his method being best described in the phrase, "I try to create sympathy for my characters, then turn the monsters loose." If you think that formula sounds simplistic, then you're overthinking the problem. If you think it only applies to horror, I can tell you you're 100% wrong. But as easy as that one line of advice sounds, pulling it off requires a pretty good understanding of pacing, structure, and how to build sympathy. That's at the heart of what we're exploring today, so let's dig deeper. We've discussed the elements of pace and setting in previous videos, but now we're taking the theoretical and actually putting it in practice. You see, even in long-form dramas, even the tearjerker ones, there's an incredible understanding of proper pacing, at least in the good ones. So let's take a look at the first example, and that's going to be our first deep cut today, the 1996 drama Phenomenon, starring John Travolta. A simple, humble mechanic in a small town celebrating his birthday in a local bar with friends. When a strange light hits him from the sky, he comes to with incredible intellect and power. His mind becomes a sponge for every single book he reads. On the surface, we have a mystery of what happened to him, but this part is so important, and I cannot stress it to you enough. That little part at the beginning, the humble, small-town mechanic celebrating his birthday with his friends, if we don't have this, we don't have attachment. Period. Yes, we want to rush to get to the start of the story, I know, but the development of who and what this person is before everything changes is paramount to our understanding of the character. This is especially key because we're going to be back here for his next birthday in the final scene of the film, a full circle that provides a very satisfying conclusion to our story. Whether it's 5 minutes, 1 chapter, or a soundbite, our introduction to your first character needs to show the audience who they are and why we care in a very short period of time. Now let's not confuse this with your hook. You can hook me by creating a character that specializes in being a badass one-man killing machine. That doesn't mean I care about them. Take, for example, the difference here between Taken and Commando. On the surface, they're fundamentally the same movie, but in Taken, more depth and attention is paid towards showing the relationship our hero has with his ex-wife and his daughter before we turn the monsters loose. If anything, we know very little about how ruthless and efficient a killer he is until we see him in action later. Meanwhile, the Arnold-centric story shows us what a man's man he is, strong and isolated, with a mysteriously absent and equally unimportant wife. He loves his daughter because she's his daughter, and when they take his daughter, his muscles will be forced to kill people until he gets his daughter. That's not to say that one of these films is better than the other, although Taken is the better story. But it is to say we're more connected to the hero we've grown more invested in. We see his life and his relationships at the outset of the story. We know what he was like before this horrible thing happens. We know why we're supposed to care. With Commando, they could have used a mannequin instead of a very, very young Alyssa Milano because she's an object in the story, a daughter for a daughter's sake. The handling of this, sympathy by virtue of what she is, isn't actually that different from our dog Rusty that stupid writer is going to kill that we were talking about in the intro. That's gross, and we can do better. Setting is another piece of the puzzle that we have to talk about. It's not just important to give proper space to characterize our cast. We have to put them in a space in our world. Remember our lessons on the hero's journey and archetypes. So many stories begin with the hero in their hometown because this is where safety is, and outside is where the monsters are. So when we're home, what does home feel like to this character? Likewise, when we're forced from the home to uncertain places outside, what does that feel like? I love that your trees are purple. That's cool. You've got 2 sons. That's awesome too. But I can't care about them as much without my other senses. What is the smell around me? What are the sounds? If I hear the beating of 50-foot wings in the skies above, am I supposed to be scared of that, or is that usual for this region? Remember, your characters are a lens that connects your audience to your world. You need to fully immerse them. Make them understand their surroundings through the eyes of this person in your world. Then capture this setting so that it fits the pacing of our story's trajectory. Did you forget anything? Oh, darn. Well, that brings us to our next problem. Everyone has this friend that is terrible at telling stories. You know who I'm talking about. They're the one that explains the first part of the story and then says, "Wait, did I tell you they were sisters?" This friend is teaching us a very valuable lesson. Before we can understand why we care about what is happening in a story, it is imperative that we properly build up these different axes in the process. I don't think we could ever have a more ready-made example, and a disappointing one at that, of this in real life than Game of Thrones' final season. See, as the first complete season to have absolutely no source content whatsoever to work off of, George R.R. Martin's series had to be related to the show writers, hitting all the important beats that tied up the loose ends of some 20 different main character story arcs. Since these had to be handled with such a deft hand before, for the most part, excitement was at a fever pitch to see how it was all going to end. Only we got exactly what I just described. We have all the important beats of what was going to happen in the final story, but absolutely none of the characterization that would make us care. For example, the character of Dany was always destined to be another Mad King like her father, and I can accept that. I can even see glimmers of genius in that season where we understand how she was going to turn. The thing is, her best and most trusted friend gets her head unceremoniously lopped off before her eyes, and then she gets real sad and broods for a few days. She feels like no one trusts her to lead, and then she invades King's Landing, and even though she wins, she goes crazy birdie and kills a huge chunk of the same people that she wanted to exalt her as so many cities she'd conquered before. That is a lot to digest, and when I say this transformation happened fast, I mean from the time Missandei's head comes off her shoulders to going cuckoo is the next episode. This character was a hero to many in our audience, and to subvert that in a single hour is the equivalent of undoing 6 books worth of content in 2 or 3 chapters. The question you have to ask yourself is, did you offer every piece of the story to your audience to invest them in your tale and make them come along for the ride? I can promise you, unless you somehow make a series that does as well or better than Game of Thrones, you're not going to be able to attack your own audience when they criticize you by saying things like, no one was going to be happy anyway because it was over. People are going to see it for what it is: rushed, forced writing without proper build-up, without characterization, and without transformation that feels believable. In other words, it was written badly, rushed, and it was their fault. A truly pitiful end for a near-perfect series. We can learn from this too, though. Not only was this series a gold standard of managing extraordinarily large casts, characterization, and investing backstory to make you care about, well, almost everyone, we can also learn from its biggest failure. This series ending is the one that our friend comes up to us and says, Dany is a tyrant queen, and then has to stop and say, oh wait, did I forget to mention Missandei's death began a downward spiral into the same madness that plagued her father? You know, because we skipped that part. There are some books and films that weave together emotion so well and so completely invest you in their world that the ending is this satisfying gut punch. Some of these do it so well, they're on my official list of movies I will never see a second time. We'll get to that list in a little bit. There are some great films in there, and you should see them if you haven't already. But we're talking about how we pull this off, so let's dig in. You've already got your Taken thing going, where we're characterizing our cast from the second they enter the story. We want to know who they are and what they're like to be around. We're going to remain consistent, both in their thinking, their speech, and their mannerisms. If you have a character that's always got their hands on their hips, don't let anyone else do that. If they do the Riker sit, if they adjust the cuff of their shirt, make it belong to that character. This repetition makes us feel like we know them. Then we switch over to your world building. I need the sights, the sounds, and the smells. I need the taste of your protagonist's favorite drink. Connect me to your world. Then we let the monsters out. How does what we already know about these characters and this world change when faced with our conflict? Walk me through by way of characterization. Show me what they're made of. Let me see and smell how the world has changed. What is life like outside their home? Now, we're moving along and we're getting ready for the finale. Before we get there, have you told me everything that I need to know about these people before we go toward our climax? Remember, once we start, there are no bathroom breaks, no do-overs, and absolutely no surprise revelations that were not built upon earlier than this. If you feel confident, then let's go. Now, here's another example of really incredible execution, and it brings us to our second deep cut, the 1999 romantic drama Cruel Intentions. Quite possibly to blame for the term stepsister becoming one of the highest search terms on adult websites, this movie is not your average teen romance drama. It is dark, unsettling, at times it's funny and sexy, and it accomplishes everything we've been talking about. Sebastian lives a charmed lifestyle as a son of incredible wealth. His sadistic stepsister makes a bet with him, which both the terms and the prize I don't think I can even discuss on here, but let's just say that it's a bet of relationship stakes. At first, they're both completely unlikable, even evil people that manipulate to get what they want and throw the rest away. But Sebastian's romantic target is a woman that would normally be repelled by a game player like him. Switching up his gears and trying to seduce her the quote-unquote right way, he finds himself falling in love with her. Now, not spoiling too much of the ending, but our setting for the finale is a busy street. Cars are flying by. Sebastian is beside the woman he loves when he's suddenly confronted by the sins of the evil person he used to be. With an ending as dark and original as its setup, it earns every single ounce of emotion it gets out of the audience. By the end, this Sebastian that you hated may be heading down the right path, but that sick, twisted sister of his, well, she goes the other way. This is one film I really do recommend studying because it isn't immediately obvious when you're starting the movie that you're going to be forced into an arc to care about someone you basically hated from the second you laid eyes on them. By the end, though, you care. Believe me, you definitely care. But DC, I can't possibly put so much characterization into every individual person in my story. I'll be too wordy. Well, guy who talks to your monitor, I'm gonna give you this. Go on. Read it. I'll wait. I don't care how hard-hearted you might be. That's gotta hit you in the feels. This is evoking emotion in a single tweet. They painted an entire picture of who someone was in 55 words. Yes, I counted. Don't ever underestimate the power of anecdotes. Also, sweetest grandpa ever. So, since we're on this down note, let's talk about sadness. It is one of the most striking emotions that we can get out of a reader because it requires an investment in our characters that transcends the written word. If you can make someone cry about a fictional character, that person has become real to them, even if only for a moment. I'm not talking about Rusty here either. Those are cheap feels. What am I talking about? Well, here's a brief list of my own personal films that I literally could only watch a single time. They were so beautiful, and I was so invested in them that I could not bring myself through the emotional torture of watching them a second time. So, I would highly recommend watching $1 Million Baby, starring Hilary Swank and Clint Eastwood, A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe and Jennifer Connelly, and last but not least, What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. Fair warning, every single one of these is a feels parade that is not a romance, nor is it a dog movie. If you can't figure out how to characterize and evoke emotion, these are the films to study. If you end up bawling your eyes out, though, that is on you. Evoking emotion isn't just about connecting one character to a reader. As we saw with the Cruel Intentions example, it can be sympathy for the devil, but it can also be so much more. It's about connecting our audience completely to our world, in the setting, the pace, the dialogue, everything that we can do to make each of our cast have their own individual voice. Then, of course, we turn the monsters loose. Once again, the donations from you guys are so awesome, and I thank you so much. We're still working with the Boston-based Needs organization to get this beautiful lady a service dog. Her name is Liana. She's 11 and on the spectrum. This wonderful person is my little girl. And if you'd like to help out, there's a link in the comments below. Also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. The link is also in the comments down there. And you're going to get Cora Blake, Arcane Agent, totally free. You'll get cool news about what I'm working on in books and here on the channel, and it comes loaded with cool authors and promotions for fantasy and sci-fi. The newest one goes out this Tuesday, May 19th, so check it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear about new videos, and as always, I'm DC Fergerson. Now have fun and get crafting.